Hello. Today we bring to a close the world's group stage. But as we have spent the past week celebrating the best the league world has to offer, the Rainbow Six community and the esports world as a whole lost a great with the passing of Michael Kickstar Stockley. An incredible talent, Kix will be remembered as one of the best color commentators to ever grace our screens. And his uncanny ability to capture our hearts and our minds with his words will only be eclipsed by his passion for the game that he so loved. While at times our world can feel so separate, it's in a moment like this that we realize how connected we truly are. This past week was impossibly tough, but it has also shown us how every corner of the esports world has been made better by Kix being in it. Kix was a beacon of light and positivity with a magnificent gravitational pull. All it takes is a click on the internet or a scroll through the timeline to get a sense of the breadth of his impact, which has clearly been felt and will continue to ripple throughout the globe as he has shaped the world of esports indelibly. We lost a titan, and long before we ever should have. My heart aches for the loss, but it smiles knowing that the life and legacy of Kickstar will live on forever in what we do. Rest in peace, Kix.
Madline, TL, Gen G, LNG.
Everything is up in the air.
제가 생각할 때는 이제 D조 전부 다 네 팀 모두 누가 이기든 누가 지든 안 이상하다고 생각해서
We'll have to see if there will be more upsets and surprises. Huge day of League of Legends.
똑같이 저는 원래 대회를 하기 전부터 저희 D조에서 저희가 1등 할 거라고 생각하고 있었고 그런 거에 있어서 LNG는 어떻게 보면 저희가 그때 아무것도 못하게 만들어줬기 때문에 그것보다 좀 더 좋은 경기력으로 확실하게 다시 꺾어주도록 하겠습니다.
They chose their moment, but the moment was too late, and Gen G wipe LNG off the map.
这次我被你们抓死了，但下次我不会就让这么轻松的被你们抓到，下一次你们会输的。
똑같이 그냥 방심 안 하고 집중해야 될 것 같아요.
LNG stomp their way to 1-1.
After playing against them, I feel like I got what they need to do. So, see you.
We haven't lost against Mad Lions yet, so I don't see why it would be different this time.
TL turning it right back. They will not be disrespected. Mad Lions too confident.
We are for sure the hope for Europe, and we are also going to show a way better performance coming in the next game.
So the next game gonna be completely different one.
코어 장전 선수한테 뭐 각오 같은 거 하고 싶은데 이번에는 아무것도 못하게 제가 열심히 죽이도록 하겠습니다.
Where? Do it if you can.
Team Liquid won't know what hit them.
The stakes continue to rise.
Hey Mad, we're coming for you.
You can never be 100% here.
这才刚刚开始。
Everything's on the table.
Let's settle this in the
It all leads to this. Make or break.
Vitality will take them.
A new era is waiting. Make it yours.
Welcome back to Worlds 2021, taking place in Reykjavik, Iceland. As Mad Lions and Gen G arrive at the arena, the path before them is perilous. Many games in Group D have gone back and forth, almost changing the course of fate. But almost aren't enough to lift the Summoners Cup. Today, Group D must give it everything they've got to earn their spot in our quarterfinals. I'm Dash, and I'm happy to be joined by both Azael and Kadril for our final day of the group stage. Two more teams can book a ticket into the quarterfinals. But let's go ahead and take a look at our standings and see how everything is shaping up so far. Yesterday, Group C's RNG and Hanwha Life Esports qualified for the quarterfinals. And while Hanwha Life took second seed, they didn't go down without a fight.
Yeah, it was a nail-biter, and Group C and Group B just shows us that gods can bleed, right? The first round robin, we thought EDG, RNG, Damwon are the favorites. Damwon have solidified that.
But T1 has taken first seed in that group. Group C, it was a nail biter. It was so close for Hanwha Life to take it off RNG.
And I think it's huge for LPL fans, right? To at least get top of one group, because it had been back-to-back LCK days. It had been the LPL just completely crashing and burning in the second round robin.
Absolutely. I would say expectations be damned, and for the most part, they have been, except for that LCK record right there.
Yeah, look at it. 9-1 in the second round robin. LPL 3-8. Most of that coming off the back of course, FPX, who fell out of the tournament as one of the favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. An incredible sight to behold. And yes, while RNG did scrape by in that top seed, I think that is where we have to focus, right? The fact that they barely did it.
Yeah, and they are the MSI champions, right? They are the strongest team to have shown up at an international event this year, beating Damwon in a best of 5, right? Went 5 games, was very close, but RNG was the best team coming into this tournament from previous tournaments, of course, with MSI, but Damwon still looked like the favorites.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be different, I think, if RNG was scraping by a T1 or something like that, but Hanwha Life was not expected to challenge at the top of the table like with these other teams. It's just shocking, honestly, to see how dominant the LCK teams have looked compared to the rest of the world.
Well, and I like to call out on the expectation of how Hanwha would show up in this tournament, and I think it is, again, another indicator of the strength of the LCK rather at the World Championship, that time and time again, as the tournament rolls on, those Korean teams only get stronger.
Yeah, and maybe play-ins helped Hanwha Life out a lot, right? Because the growth in the tournament has been phenomenal. And one of the champions they were playing a lot yesterday, and other teams, was Twisted Fate. We've got a little...
Yeah, this guy right here.
This guy right next to you. This little Devil TF.
Oh, where'd he go?
He was a European special, right? In Europe, this champ was so high prioritized with like Humanoid and Niski just favoring this champ so much. LPL teams, especially crying, loved it. And we were looking at drafts yesterday as and we were like, how are all these teams getting Twisted Fate?
Well, I'm just shocked that Lee Sin is still getting banned over it. You know, champions that don't feel like they need to be that high priority. We're seeing Xin go through. It doesn't seem like that bad of a trade for Lee Sin. To give over TF, it completely changes the way you have to play the game. And we've seen so many drafts dismantled by this. They're like, we're going to counterpick top, we're going to play through sides, and then the other team has TF. And now your plan is out the window.
And teams just try different counters every now and then. We've seen Sylas, we've seen Rise, we've seen LeBlanc, which we thought TF was good into, being now picked into TF. Top laners like Jax coming in to avoid the TF stuns and things like this. It's interesting to see the evolution of the champion.
And it's going to raise some questions, right, about the preparation of the 4 teams that we have taking to the stage today. And as we think about Group D taking to the Rift today, we must acknowledge the pressure that Mad Lions are under as the final hope of Europe's here at Worlds.
Oh, Mad Lions. Oh, Mad Lions. I must say...
It's not the most confidence-inducing comment right there.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful 2 years to watch this team ever since they joined the LEC, right? In 2020, spring and summer, they were finishing second in regular season in summer. Obviously, the biggest hiccup they've had was the play-ins run where they fell apart, right? But then coming into this year, winning the spring, winning summer, taking Damwon to 5 games in a semi-final, right? All the cards are there to point to this is the best team Europe has to offer, and they dominated the playoffs in summer. Now we need to see that team reflected in the World Championship.
And honestly, they didn't have the first round robin that they wanted, but last to first is 1 game in this group. So you're not really in the same situation, dire situation like Fnatic was or like C9 was, where they had so much ground to make up. You can be tied for first if you just win your first game of the day.
It's a really good point, right? This is an extremely close group. The closest one we've had coming into the second round robin. And honestly, Cage, I don't know whether or not that could be considered a good or a bad thing. I mean, yes, you are in the striking. Yes, I mean, you're within striking distance, of course. But that also means that everyone else is within striking distance of you.
I think to me, the most interesting thing about this group is this is the group that's got to watch every other group throughout the whole world. Second round robin, right? They finished on day 3 of the first round. They had a day break, and they've had 3 days of watching the other groups, being able to scrim during these days while these teams are playing, looking at the champion prioritization. So they have the most information to work with. And a team like Mad Lions, looking at the LEC, a team that has more time to adapt and evolve, is Mad Lions the team that needs that. If they were in rogue situation, thrown straight into round 2 after a day's break, I think they would struggle. But 3 days is definitely enough for them to fix their issues.
And I think that so much about having success at Worlds is adapting to the meta, is getting a strong read and understanding of what you need to play, how you fit into that style. And these teams have been gifted that time. So I think really today we're going to see the teams come out on top that have the best read on the meta, that have really settled into that over these last 3-4 days.
Ban TF. Play Kennen. For the love of God, just play Kennen, because that is a ridiculous pick.
Graves is pretty good too.
Graves is pretty good too. Good. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Top lane dominance here at Worlds 2021. You see it right there on your screens, though. 0-5 for the LPL against the Western teams. And so the question
and there's
remains...
2 of them in this group. LNG's doomed.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, 2 Western teams that could jump to 07 today. Who knows?
The problem I have with that is it's the West beating LPL, but it's NA beating EU, right? And all of those teams are in that group.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
no.
So if Gen.G's the front runner for the group, Mad needs to beat TL because I think it's a battle between EU and NA in that case, right?
Yeah, and let's be honest, it was incredibly close between TL and Mad the first time around, so I think it's far from settled.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think TL looked worse than Mad in the other games. You know, their 2 games against, they got completely run over.
But hold on, I actually want to backtrack just one moment, right? Because is there an expectation that Gen.G is going to skate out of this group?
Well, funny you say that, but the only team that's ever got knocked out in the last 8 years of the World Championship for Korea in World's group stage was Gen.G 2018. Well, however, Worlds 2020, Gen.G topped their group 5-1.
Stop. Yeah, we didn't need the second part. Okay?
However, there's a lot of ups and downs where it's like, yes, they were the top of the group last year, but only teams fallen out. But the games are just so close between all of these teams.
All right, well, the LCK representatives, Gen.G, will take to the stage in our first matchup. And we'll be keeping an eye on all of our teams as they finish their second round robin of the stage. 6-hole games in front of us, possible tiebreakers to close it out. And again, in my opinion, likely tiebreakers because of the closeness of this group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is still on the table the 4-way tie, of course. Madness could ensue. I think it's something like 6% of the scenarios can result in that.
I think the most interesting thing is the first 2 games, right? If Mad and TL win their first 2 games, that whole group is 2-2.
Yep.
So the rest of the day, God knows where it's going.
All right, well, there you have it. Our 4th game, we'll see the best in the West clash on the Rift. Both hungry for a spot in the quarterfinals, as well as the history books. Today's featured matchup, presented by Mercedes-Benz, is Mad Lions versus Team Liquid.
It's a rivalry as old as League of Legends itself, and embers of passion are flaring between Europe and North America once again. Tonight, Team Liquid and Mad Lions are in the spotlight, and this game could determine the chances of making it out of Group D. The back-to-back LEC champions are the last hope for Europe, and the heavyweight of the region's legacy now rests on their shoulders.
Lid forced to use the ultimate, instantly into the wall, that's going to hit 4, that's massive, that's what Mad were waiting for, Clint now going down, Armut into the backside! Oh, and there goes the Yumi ult, that's a double looking for a triple.
In their last matchup, Team Liquid's veteran roster reigned victorious.
TL claimed the first victory in the EU-NA rivalry.
And the 4-time LCS champions are looking to achieve the goal they failed to reach during their glory days.
Alfari still waiting to come in. Alfari waiting on the backside. Maybe he can get something done. Carsey's still living for now, but that's the massive shutdown traded right back. They're going to find one. Alfari now in the midst of the team. Mad Lions team fighting is good, but TL have found the punish. TL have found the fight.
This is not just a match to get through to the next stage. This is a match for honor and bragging rights in the year to come, as Mad Lions and Team Liquid face off.
A pivotal matchup for both teams. And with how neck-and-neck Group D is, every win, every moment counts, including the draft. It all starts there, gents, and again, we've talked about preparation. So I turn to you, Kadril. Again, there's evidence of 3 other groups playing. What have these teams learned, and what have they even learned from the last time around that they faced each other?
I mean, the biggest thing, like we talked about, they've had a couple more days to scrim and watch teams, and Jarvan has been looking really weak. This is what Mad Lions picked in day 1 into TL, but look at their champions. I'm a jungler myself, and I used to play a lot of Jarvan in the LEC, but playing Jarvan into Ezreal, LeBlanc, Camille sounds like a disaster. You really can't make plays happen unless you have some kind of huge follow-up. What's their follow-up? It's really like a rel. So I think that their comp was really based around top, right? Counter-picking Camille with Jax.
Yep, and as soon as the lanes were getting pushed in, you can track the Jarvan so easily. You know, they kind of went all in on this Jax pick, it felt like, but it's not really comfort for Armut, so it didn't really feel like a traditional Mad Lions draft. And I think that, you know, while it's good to look for these new picks and these new clever points, I think you also have to play towards strength, and we did see that in one of the later games in the first round robin, where he got to bring out the Wukong and he got to showcase just how different of a player he looks.
Yeah, and Elioya's impact was little to nil in this draft just because of how the champion functions and interacts with other champions. We saw him on the Kiana against Gen.G, and the difference was just mind-blowing.
Well, again, that comes in the 4th game of the day. One of Mad's newest members arrives at Worlds, a 2-time LEC champion, still eager to prove himself and his region to all of the world. Welcome to the Rift, Elioya, powered by Oppo.
Hello, I'm Elioya, the jungler from Alliance. And it's been a long journey. I think when I first joined the beginning, like I was still new to the LEC, so it took me a bit to get used to the normal playstyle. But once I could get in shape, it was really enjoyable to play with my teammates.
we expect a lot from ourselves because this is a tournament we have been preparing for a long time and we really want to represent Europe in a good way. I mean, winning Worlds would mean a lot. I think it's just the objective of every player, and it was my objective since 3 years ago when I didn't even go into professional. So it would feel really relieving to be able to prove yourself and the people that what you're capable of.
Elyoya and all of Mad Lions will have the chance to prove themselves in our first match of the day against Gen G. And the last time that these two teams faced off, it did seem like Mad had it in the bag from the draft.
Yeah, they did. And I think the draft was just kind of handed to them on a silver platter, it felt like. Because if you know LEC and you know Armut, you know he loves Wukong, right? I think he has like 1 loss on Wukong against RNG at MSI. Domestically, he was almost undefeated, I believe. And you can see it in the draft here. 4-pick on the Wukong into Graves, Xin Zhao, Kalista. If you're picking these 3 AD champs, which are slightly immobile, into a champion like Wukong, you're asking for it. You're asking for his Wukong. And I feel like despite this game being close, Mad Lions already handed it in draft.
And I do think that this is one of the ways that some of the Western teams have got advantages over some of the Eastern teams. It feels like the Eastern teams ban the meta. They do not ban specific pocket picks. They don't actually focus as much on what these individual players like to play. We saw that here against Armut. Also yesterday against Adam, blind pick the Renekton, and then they're banning out Graves and Jace.
Yep.
That's not what Adam plays. That's not his style. And instead, I think that is an area that we can maybe get an advantage as these Western teams.
It was a beautiful draft, and of course, Mad was tested. They were pushed into the late game, and it did take some intelligent and creative play out of the Kiana and the LeBlanc paired up with the Yuumi to ultimately make it happen. But by the same token, Kadral, I think we turn a critical eye to Gen G in that game because they definitely had a mistake or two that helped Mad out in their quest for victory.
Yeah, a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, mainly coming from mid lane, right? From BDD, the least you expect. We always look at this. BDD playing Azir has to push into Humanoid, and then he just kind of ease into the tower range while getting chained and just dies, right? So a lot of these things kind of happen throughout the game where they were handed a free Wukong pick for Armut. BDD makes a huge mistake in mid to give Humanoid a free lane phase. Humanoid's obviously laughing at the bottom of the screen next, how important it is for the lane itself. And this game was incredibly close. And as much as I am part of the LEC, and maybe I'm a little bit biased now and then, I don't think Mad Lions won that game. I think Gen G lost it.
Okay.
And I mean, it is scary when you look at the other 2 games that BDD actually played in the group, where he was absolutely destroying teams, against TL. Him and Clid pairing up, absolutely eviscerated TL. He has been on form. I do think that game was kind of just a blip on the radar. And as you're saying, you can't expect him to make those kind of mistakes.
So then is it fair to me, or for me rather, to expect that the mid lane is going to be the make or break lane in this matchup?
Oh yeah, definitely. If Mad Lions have anyone to rely on, it's Humanoid, right? This man was at Worlds 2019 with Splice, and they topped the group alongside FPX, the world champions. They actually played a tiebreaker. 3 of those games, Splice versus FPX, they played. 2 of them, Splice were winning, right? And one of them kind of threw away to FPX. So they were actually neck and neck, and Humanoid was a big driving factor behind that. So if there's anyone to rely on, it's definitely Humanoid. And if there's anyone to play through in the current meta, it's Humanoid. But just looking at the combined kills per minute at the bottom of the screen right now, Gen G against Mad and TL, there was almost 40 kills at 30, 35 minutes in these games. This is an LCK team with more than a kill a minute. It's really fast-paced for Gen G.
It absolutely is. It's also been really interesting to see kind of the evolution from the first round robin to the second. Dragons were being almost entirely ignored. It felt like in the first round robin, people were taking first dragon 12, 13, 14 minutes. Over the last couple of days, teams have had 2 dragons by that time, have been going for very early souls, and it has been much more about playing towards dragons, but using topside prio to do it. Like, people are focusing on top, but then bringing down their top laner, fighting for early dragons, trying to stack those and trying to use those as a win condition, kind of similarly to what we saw more in summer.
That, in my mind, raises more concerns for Gen G, right? The idea that the pace of the game, or at least the pace of play for teams, has increased, has sped up over time here in the group stage.
Yeah, and that all comes down to the meta, because traditionally, you look at past Worlds, you pick Azir Corki or something like this, and there's a lot of scaling, and people fall back to scaling. But the problem is, the game's changed. Elder Dragon back then wasn't as affected. It was about Infernal Drake stacking, right? You had 4 Infernals, or whatever it was, and you were really, really strong. But now it feels like the team who gets the first 2 dragons, they can drop things on the map and then force you to play into scaling, right? So it's like, I'm playing an early game draft, but my scaling is the objectives, right? So I can play for the objectives in the early game, and eventually you have to fight me, and that's where the teams are prioritizing.
It's also kind of interesting because I feel like the power of the dragons themselves has shifted a lot. Like, I felt like Ocean Soul has looked pretty worthless in a lot of the games, and has felt less impactful than in the past because burst is so high. People are playing so many squishy comps with like 4 damage dealers, enchanter supports, things like this, where you're getting less inherent value out of that. And to me, it's making things like Mountain Soul that much more powerful. You know, it's actually changing the priority that teams have on Dragons.
Can they? And if they can, how do they slow the game down?
Well, you're against Mad Lions, so you know they're going to run at you and they know they're going to do something crazy. That's how Mad Lions are. They're very innovative. They're very creative in the way that they approach a game. So I think the interesting thing about Poppy, yeah, maybe. You could see it. But the interesting thing for Gen G, I believe Birdall is starting, not Rascal. Yep. And the last time we saw him play with Gen G, the game was really, really quick paced. He was just going for these crazy solo queue-esque plays, and he was on a side lane going 1v4.
And he died a lot.
He died a lot.
He died like 8 times against
Well, good note. We'll see what happens with a full 4 days, right, for these teams to kind of rework their strategies and come in refreshed and renewed. EU fans, get ready to rally behind your boys as we join Atlas, Chronicler, and Wolf for the call.